The poll workers arrived before sunrise. They unpack quickly, ballots and envelopes, voter registration lists, a bottle of purple ink. Outside, early voters slowly gathered. At 6 a.m. exactly, the chief poll worker opened the polls. 2 men sealed the ballot boxes before a small public crowd, tying the Tupperware-style containers closed with yellow zip wire. They took the ballot boxes back inside and set them in the middle of the room. This is how Burundi picks a president. Sort of. This year's presidential vote was less of an election than a formality. It was the second vote of 4 in the country's election season, stretching from May to September. The first poll seemed promising. More than 90% of registered voters turned out, and there was almost no violence. But opposition parties said the first election was rigged. No way, they claimed, did the ruling party really take 64% of the vote. All opposition parties boycotted the presidential election in protest. 12 of them joined forces for a different kind of campaign than they'd imagined. Opposition leader Alexis Nduhije insisted.
No, we will campaign against the election.
Why?
And then people will never go to vote.
The standoff has made things tense in Burundi. By election day, June 28th, nearly 100 grenades had gone off in the country, most of them in the capital city of Bujumbura, according to Human Rights Watch. Come voting morning, crowds across the country were, for the most part, small. Here, in central Burundi, poll workers say the queue before polls opened in the last election, in May, had been more than 25 feet long. On presidential election day, it was only a few people deep. Some say that's because the opposition supporters stayed home. Others say it's because Burundians were afraid. The idyllic country has only recently emerged from a 10-year civil war. The presidential vote was supposed to be a proclamation of democracy. Instead, local radio reported 2 grenade explosions and an attack by armed gunmen at a polling booth, all before 11 a.m. By the end of the day, officials were reporting nearly 80% turnout, but privately, people I spoke with who saw the morning turnout said they thought that number was optimistic. Inside this Kigutu polling station, though, things were pretty straightforward. You'd come in and check your name off the voter registration list. You'd get a ballot paper and 2 envelopes. If you wanted to vote for the president, you put your ballot paper in the white envelope. If you wanted to vote against him, you put it in the black envelope. You do all that in this voting booth, a 2-sided plywood structure shaped like an open book. Once you've stuffed your envelope in secret, the white one gets dropped in the small plastic box and the black one in the bigger box. You get your voting card stamped and you get your finger inked so that you can't vote again somewhere else. The ink is the part most Burundians seem to hate. The heavy ink drips from their fingers to the floor. Just outside the polling station, one woman dragged her freshly inked finger through the thick grass, trying to remove the goop before it dried. The whole thing looks pretty standard. Here's an elections observer from an independent civil society organization working at a nearby polling station, speaking on a windy hilltop outside the empty polling booths. Things didn't go this smoothly in May. The opposition parties called it fraud. The Independent Electoral Commission and a European Union observation team call what happened irregularities. But this time, the outcome was already clear. Pierre Nkurunziza was going to win. And to Cesarian Ndayambaje, that's justified.
Nezerewe neza yuko gushika uwo munsi je mbyara ku buntu ata amafaranga ntanze umwana wanje akavugwa ku buntu nico gituma ngira umwete ushikamye cyane nkagira n'intege ndende kugira ndamutore.
The win may have been inevitable, says Gabriel Gahungu, but this vote does not a democracy make.
Ndiko ndaraba mbona yuko nta kamaro kuko y'imigambwe ari myinshi akaba ari umwe nta kamaro naco mbona. Nta kintu atari kingira kamaro ariko mugabo ikintu nogaruka gatoyi nuko iyo umugambwe ari umwe akaba ari myinshi ari umwe ntibishemeye kugira ngo aho umugambwe umwe kandi mu Burundi hari myinshi. Icyo nico novuga.
The opposition coalition says it won't participate in the legislative elections in July either. Its leaders say they're fed up with the theater of democracy. But Burundians are also fed up with something a little different. When the 3rd grenade exploded in downtown Bujumbura 5 hours after the polls closed, One hotel worker shook his head. Like most Burundians, he doesn't know who's behind the attacks, the opposition or the ruling party trying to frame them. To him, it doesn't much matter. We don't want this, he said.
Matora,